Hi, everyone. Just another reminder to please check out my website at www.medyhne.com and check out my sessions, my mentoring, my Patreon community, my YouTube channel, Arise Humanity. I've got some fantastic interviews and fantastic videos there. So a lot of time goes into that channel. Please check it out. I also have my Soul Tribe channel on Rumble, and I have a whole range of higher school of learning workshops for you to be able to learn a whole range of different things that inspire you, as well as art, music, and books. So I hope to see you at my website. And if I can help you with anything on your soul journey, please contact me. Thank you so much.
Hum mani padme hum, hum mani padme hum, hum mani padme hum, hum mani padme hum, hum.
Hello, everyone. It's Medina here from Arise Humanity on YouTube and also on Soul Tribe on Rumble. And today I have a beautiful guest who is going to share with us some very important information about different aspects of the metaphysical. Her name is Maya Zahira, and she's a spiritual author and a thought leader specializing in the field of psychic protection. And she has a very interesting story to tell. And then at the end of this story, we're going to be sharing with the audience beautiful solutions and ways that we can work with energies that perhaps are not in alignment with our own energy. So I'm really excited to welcome you, Maya. Thank you so much. You're based in Southern Arizona, USA.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
lovely to have this connection with you all that way across the ocean. And welcome. Please share with us a little bit about your background, and then I'd love to hear all about your story.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And you're in Australia, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I live on an island in Queensland.
Oh my gosh. I just want to speak to your audience and say this is our first time meeting each other. Medina and I are just meeting, and I just love connecting with new colleagues. And so we're going to be making a new connection here. And all of the audience gets to see our new connection and our conversation about spiritual empowerment and psychic protection and truth seeking and so much more. So,
Well said.
about a little bit of background. We'll start off with some background.
Lovely.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me. So, I was trying to think of what year. It was like 1994. So a really long time ago was when I officially began as a spiritual teacher, although I was already doing aspects of spiritual teaching even when I was a teenager. And I was leading large groups of other teenagers. And then, so 1994 was when I was no longer a teenager. I was an adult, and I was doing it in an adult capacity. And so I had various levels of doing my spiritual work, and that evolved over time. And so how I now, in the place where I'm at now with my work, I look back and I describe myself back then as a feel-good spiritual practitioner, which actually we need our feel-good practitioners. This planet is a difficult place, and we need the practitioners that help us to feel good. That's how I would describe my work back then. I was teaching spiritual empowerment, not the same version as I teach now. I was teaching drumming classes, like empowerment through spiritual drumming, sacred dance, belly dancing, Reiki. I was doing Reiki training back before it was even popular. energy healing sessions, and just like personal breakthrough empowerment groups. And so the whole spectrum of personal empowerment, spiritual growth, and so much more. And then in 2016, I went through a really unexpected experience. Now, I want to back up a little bit and say that even before 2016, I had a cognitive understanding that spiritual discernment and psychic protection are important. I understood. I was smart enough to know that it's not a good idea to mess with things spiritually that I don't know anything about. That if I could tell that there was a really dark energy, don't go diving into that if you don't know what you're doing. So I had a good head on my shoulders, enough that even though I was the feel-good spiritual practitioner, in my coursework that I taught my students, I had a segment where I taught psychic protection. But it was all like the basic stuff of what everybody teaches, like visualize white light in your aura and burn sage, and like all these really basic things that are very popular and that, excuse me, that I had read about in books, and just that I had absorbed through the common spiritual culture. But then in 2016, I accidentally came in contact with a spiritual colleague who had some very negative energies connected with her. Now, just out of compassion for a group, I want to just say I'm not going to go into the gory details of that situation today. I'm going to just go over the high points, because the important point here is where it brought me. But it is important to point out that I wasn't dabbling in the dark stuff. I was actually going to a colleague for a second opinion on a situation that I just wanted some ideas about. And so I went to her, not realizing that she was actually working with this is someone who said that she worked with angels. She was working with very dark energy.
This I hear sometimes, that people go to spiritual teachers that they think, are working with the light. And it's really about discernment, isn't it? Because they connect with them, and these bring in energies that don't serve the people, the clients that are going to see them. There was, in an old town that I lived in, there was a lady who was called the Angel Lady. And she really worked with dark energies. And when I came into town and I set up a healing space, she was not happy. And she sent me all this awful energy. And I just had to muster all my resources just to protect my energetic field and what I was doing, because, I was holding a healing space in town and she didn't like that. And so she did everything she could to, and she couldn't sabotage what I was doing. I was able to get beyond that, but there had been other people who had been light workers who had come across her, and she'd done that to them as well, and they had been physically, affected by what she'd done. And impacted in that way. So it does happen. Unfortunately, this woman also was, she said she was very excited about having connected with Hillary Clinton. So that was a bad sign in itself. But, the angel lady that I'm talking about. But anyway, this, I do hear this happens, and I have had experience of people like that say they're of the light, but you're in their energy and they don't feel good. And then you start feeling stuff in your stomach, in your gut, and you just drops your frequency so much. So it's really about being tuned into your own energy when you're around people, and you get better and better at that over time. But anyway, keep going. Interesting.
I'm so glad you shared that. It's too bad that you went through that experience, and I'm so sorry to hear that you did. And I'm not surprised. Like, I'm writing my third book right now, and it's literally about this. It's about abusive spiritual teachers, and not just the verbally and emotionally abusive, but the ones that are working with the dark, who say that they're working with the light.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
common. And you actually, you said what I was thinking. So I'm so glad we're on the same wavelength about discernment. In our spiritual environment, I think it's so common for people to, like, people are trained, I think from childhood, to look to others for the answers, to look toward their authorities, their parents, their teachers, etc. And then when people are adults and they're engaging in spiritual seeking, they're looking for the answers from whoever they think is the spiritual authority. And no one should have spiritual authority over you. You have your own authority, but it's part of our cultural, like, indoctrination that we're trained that way. So have compassion for yourself, everybody. Like, you were trained to be that way from birth, but now you can step out of that and you can start to use your own discernment. And Medina, I love how you immediately went to, like, these basic intuitive feelings, like the feeling in your stomach, the feeling in your body told you that something wasn't right. So you don't have to be like a super psychic. It's great if you are, if whoever is watching is a super psychic, but those of you who aren't, you can just pay attention to your body, to, like, what your stomach feels like, what your head feels like, what your energy feels like. And that will tell you if this person is a good, even just if they're a good fit or not, or if there's something not safe about them.
Yes, yes.
So back to the story. Back to the story. This is great. I'm loving this. So back in 2016, I really was very surprised, actually, when this situation happened, because I feel that I was already a pretty discerning person, but the situation with this colleague was that the energies working with her were very crafty, deceitful shapeshifters that I think were even fooling her. So it was a situation where the person, because sometimes the spiritual teacher or healer knows, and sometimes they don't know that they're working with something negative. Yeah. And if they don't know, they don't want to know because they're in denial. I've run into that. Yeah. So I was able to see what was really going on. And I don't know, I really don't know why I was able to see what was going on. I don't know why, but that was actually what put me under major attack, because what was working through her was very threatened by me. So I did go through a very major psychic attack for about 6 weeks before I was able to figure things out. I'll leave out all the details of the craziness, but I do, for anybody who wants to go deeper with it, I have my first book, Darkness Disguised as Light. Wow. Is this story. It's this story of, like, all the details of, it was like I was living a Dan Brown novel, the one who, it's like these spiritual mysteries of, yes, like, what the heck is going on. Da Vinci I had to first, yeah, right. I had to first figure out that it was coming from her, from the thing that was working with her. So that took a while. And then I had to figure out how to clear it, because it was not your typical energy.
They're really slippery, aren't they? Some of them, because they really present as light, and sometimes it can look like light and present on the superficial, but it's extremely sort of a manipulative energy, a deceptive energy, an energy that's very sometimes hidden and disguised, because it's clever, this energy, and it knows that it has to present as light, otherwise that you won't be drawn to it. So it can be a real test in those levels of discernment, can't it?
Absolutely. And this is where I came to understand false light entities. That's the common, I think that's what a lot of people are calling them now. But when I was first having this experience, there weren't all the videos on YouTube with people talking about false light entities. So I was using that term, and then I think it was coming through, the awareness was coming through the collective consciousness, I think kind of through a lot of people at once, because I started talking about it on YouTube. Other people started talking about it on YouTube. False light entities. Some synonyms for that would be like imposter entities, shapeshifters, tricksters. There are various different kinds of beings that will pretend. We can go into that a little bit later if we want to circle back. But I'm going to just wrap up our story. Excuse me. One really important thing that happened was that I had this big realization that all of those popular methods, the burn sage, visualize white light, call on your guardian angel, I'm not saying that those things are bad, but those things were not enough when I was going through something extreme. So I just want to say that if anyone ever goes, hopefully this never happens to anybody, any of your viewers, but if you ever go through anything of a more any spiritual situation of a more serious nature, and the very basic techniques for clearing don't work, it is not just you. Like, I've worked with hundreds of people who have had the same issue. They've come to me and they've said, help, I don't know what to do. Everybody's telling me to burn sage, and it's actually making the situation worse. I don't know what to do. So when I was going through it, I had to figure it out all on my own. I was calling up all my colleagues and they were saying, like, just burn sage, or you must have like bad karma, or the only reason why this would happen to you is if you have bad vibes. And I mean, it was just like the most unhelpful
No.
advice. Not helping me. Like, does anyone know what to do? And then I also was finding, now this was back in 2016, so there are more books on the market now, but back then when I looked online, a lot of the books on psychic protection that I found were utilizing methods that I didn't want to use, like calling on dark forces to protect yourself. And it's like, that's not my style. That's not what I want to do. And so eventually I was able to figure out how to clear that particular attack. And then as a result, in the following months, I had a major spiritual awakening. So I had an additional spiritual awakening, and I was having all of these downloads of information. And this interesting thing happened where I would get into conversations with people about psychic protection, about empowerment, and I would stop mid-sentence and I would be like, how do I know all of this? Like, it was nothing that I had read in any books. I didn't learn it from any teachers. This was all stuff that had been downloaded as a result of what I had gone through.
So you had to experience it in the actual physical in order to really fully be able to help others and share your experience with others. It's like, I had a baby who passed at birth, and you can read all about it all you want, but you can't really support on the same level other people who've been through that unless you've actually been through that experience yourself, because it doesn't matter how much you read about it, you can't feel the experience of what it felt like in the same way,
Yes. And I'm so sorry to hear about the experience that you went through. And you're absolutely right. Like, I haven't had that experience that you just mentioned, and I can try to empathize, but I will never truly understand. And the same is true in a different way, obviously, with any situation. And with psychic attack or spiritual warfare situations, one challenge that people run into when they are having their own, when they're going through their own psychic attack or unusual spiritual situation, and their loved ones, maybe they're trying to be supportive, but they don't understand.
Mm.
Like their eyes kind of glaze over, like, I don't understand what you're talking about, but it's okay, honey. Like, I'll support you, pat, pat, pat. And they don't understand.
It is hard for people anyway to understand that it's not a physical manifestation, but it's a sort of a spirit manifestation. And then they don't understand that the energies of that can be, even more sort of unnerving perhaps than even the physical. So there's another layer of complication in that, I think.
Well, and the phrase that comes to mind is existential crisis.
Yeah.
Like when I went through my situation, like I went through literally a couple of years of existential crisis after that, because everything that I had believed to be true, I found out wasn't really true. And I had to completely reorient and figure things out. And because I didn't have a mentor, I didn't have anybody who had gone through what I was going through. And so actually, when I was going through that attack, before I was clear of it, I made a vow, because I sat on my bed. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I hadn't quite broken through the situation yet. And I was nervous about going to sleep.
And I know what you're going to say, but go ahead. I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
I was praying, and I said, I don't know what to do about this. And I felt like I was being pushed beyond what I thought my capacity was.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I have the strength to do this. I don't know how to do this. And I said, and I also, deep in my gut, I know that I'm not the only person going through this. I know if I'm going through this, there's got to be a lot of other people too. I can't be the only one. Mm-hmm. And I recognized in that moment that it wasn't just the situation, the spiritual situation itself, but going through it alone and not having support was making it doubly traumatic. Mm. And I said, if I get through this, because at that point I didn't know if I was going to get through it. I said, if I get through this, when I get through this, I am going to help people with this.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. I picked it up before you said it, that you actually said to the divine, and this can relate to so many people out there, everyone who's going through challenging times right now. When you put your focus on universal service and divine service and put it beyond yourself, and you put it to God, and you say, oh, whatever terminology we want to call God, that can be a religious term, but you know what I mean? Source, the light, whatever. When you say, I invite you to help me, please, God, through this experience. And I promise that when I get through this, I'm going to devote and contribute my energy to helping other people that are going through this experience, because I know that this is what it's teaching me. I'm getting a lot of goosebumps now as I'm talking. So everyone out there who's going through a hard experience, please remember that is often to arm you and equip you with the skills and the abilities to be able to go forward and help others who are going through the same thing. And I think that's such a powerful lesson. I'm getting a lot of energy as I'm saying that. That's a wonderful thing that you're sharing there, Maya. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's just, it's so powerful, whether it's this kind of situation or, like you said, any kind of situation, when you have personally gone through it, you have gone through the dark night of the soul, you have prayed for help, you have had to figure it out, you've received guidance, you've had to take the action. And it's like, to me, it felt like, now I'm personally not a weightlifter, but it felt like being in a weightlifting championship or something, where I was having to lift weights way above what I thought I could lift. And I was having to go way beyond what I thought I could do as far as my personal strength and my spiritual strength. And, there's something so powerful about going through the situation and having to move through to find the level of inner strength to go through the situation and get through it and past it, and then to be able to turn around and reach your hand and help the next people. And I was just telling some of the students in my academy last week that I believe the best mentors are the ones that are a few steps ahead of you, not 1,000 steps where you can't even dream of getting where they're at, but the person who's been where you're at or pretty much where you're at, and they haven't just read a book about it or taken a workshop, but they've been there and they've walked the walk, and they're turning around and helping you taking those steps forward.
What about that expression, you never receive more that you can handle? Do you believe in that?
I have mixed feelings about that one. I mean, I think in the context of the story that I'm sharing, yes, I can absolutely see that. I do believe that I went through that for a reason. I now look at it as a major spiritual boot camp, a training period that I was put through. Yes. There's no way I could be doing the level of work that I'm doing now if I had just simply taken a workshop or read 50 books on the subject. There's no way. So yes, I was like forced to develop those muscles and be given more than I thought that I could handle to literally force me to like super up level. That said, I do think there are people on the planet who are given, and I say this with compassion, that there are people who are given more than they can handle, and it's so I don't think it's one answer across the board to that.
And I think it's important to also remember that, you know, before we incarnate, we often choose these things to go through, because from that perspective, we think, yep, I'm going to be able to get through this, no problem at all. But once you're in the actual physical 3D density realm, it's often quite another story. So you're seeing with different eyes, you know, when you're on the other side and making your soul contracts and deciding, you know, what you're going to experience. And then it's another thing when you're actually in this reality. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm laughing about that because I think many of us have at least either memories or a sense of what it may have been like on the other side. And I have various memories that feel very much like past life memories, but they're on the other side. So memories outside of this incarnation. And I just had to laugh when you were sharing that last part because yeah, like when we're not in the physical density, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to choose to have a physical illness and I'm going to choose to have this and that. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. I would like challenge because I really enjoy a challenge and,
yeah,
you know, all these.
And I really want my spirit to go strong and I'm going to get through this.
Yeah. And I totally think, I mean, I really feel that describes my spirit. Like I've always been, I think I have like an overachiever kind of spirit. I think that's just my essence.
Yeah.
And so like I chose, like in a lot of ways, I chose the harder way. And there are times where I'm just like face palming it, going like, why? Why did I choose that? I mean, I get it. I do get it. But like when you're in the thick of it, it's not always fun.
Having said that too, I always say now, I say, look, I'm all up for soul growth. I'm onto it. I love it. That's great. But please give me a gentle path. and allow me to, you know, experience this in a way that's not going to be too dramatic or overwhelming or difficult, but give me the soul teachings in a way that is in alignment with, you know, a more of a gentle way of learning. So that's what I say now. I put that out there and it seems to happen now. So that's great. Touch wood.
Yeah. Even though we do choose some of our soul contracts, I do think that we can change some of those. We can soften them. I really like what you just described about saying the prayer Like, please, let's make this gentler. It doesn't need to be quite so intense. Let's lighten it up a little bit. I mean, I think we can ask for grace. I think we
Yes.
can ask for that and receive it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I thought maybe, of course, please guide me where you'd like for me to go, but I thought maybe we would touch on a couple of the really common misconceptions, false beliefs about psychic protection. I have just a couple that we could talk about.
Beautiful. Thank
What do
you.
you think?
Perfect.
Okay. So I talk about these at the beginning of my second book, the Psychic Attack Source Book.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons why I talk about them at the beginning of the book is because before we go into all of the nitty gritty of what's actually going on with with all of this weird spiritual stuff, we need to get through, let's tackle some of these popular false beliefs because they are real hangups for people. And the first one especially. So we definitely need to talk about this. So before we even go into this first one, I want to just invite everybody to take a nice deep breath. And as you exhale, just ground your energy, just anchor down into your being. Because you are powerful and you have the truth. You are connected with your inner guidance. And so one of the first false beliefs is that learning about psychic protection will suddenly make you a magnet for all sorts of bad entities. It's like if you even read a book about protection, all of a sudden it's like they all just come rushing in from everywhere and just smashing onto your energy field. And yes, there is the law of attraction that the overall energy that we send out does have an impact on what we call back to us. But there's some nuance to it. And the nuance is that if you are afraid to look at something because you're afraid that it's going to draw bad stuff to you, it's actually the fear of the fear that's causing the problem. So if you're watching this, you might have to watch the replay again like 3 times and wrap your brain around that.
Can I say it in another way? So resistance can create you actually to experience that, because the resistance means that you're not energetically clear, you're not neutral, and so therefore there's some sort of learning required or involved in order to clear that and get to a point where you are in neutrality.
I love that you brought up resistance, and I totally agree with what you just said. Mm-hmm. There's another saying that is, what you resist
persists. I was trying to remember that actually as I was talking, so I'm glad you said that saying.
Yeah. So the universe is filled with all sorts of opposites. Mm-hmm. And we need to remember that, because I think it's human nature to really polarize and say, well, this one thing is true, therefore everything else is not true. But we need to remember that if you're very resistant of something, for example, learning about anything dark, then that is what is going to cause that issue to persist. So I would say that instead of the common belief, what you focus on is what you draw to you, actually what you fear, what you are afraid of, you will draw to you. And so I love that you use the word neutral. If you can be in a neutral space without having your triggers activated, and you can breathe and anchor and do what you need to do to feel safe, whether that's calling in your spiritual allies, balancing your energies, connecting with a tree, whatever you need to do to feel calm and anchored so that you can have a conversation or engage in learning about anything. Like, some people are very avoidant of their money issues. And then they end up going into bankruptcy because they're trying to focus on their vision board, and they're completely avoiding their inner shadow about that. So that's just like a side example there of how that can really mess a person up. And it's similar with the dark energies as well. We need to be able to look at what's in front of us. And an analogy that I like to use is that if you wanted to be the best automobile driver, like you wanted to be a very safe driver, let's say you have kids or you're driving other people regularly, you want to be safe on the road, so you decide to take a safe driving course so that you can be aware of what other drivers tend to do and what some of the road hazards might be, and so that you can take the appropriate actions while you're driving and stay safe, right? So by taking that course, that doesn't all of a sudden attract auto accidents, to like cars to crash into you. Right.
Great.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
You were going to share something.
Well, it's just that, at the moment on the planet, it's really pushing all our shadow aspect up to the forefront so that we can transmute it and move forward in our soul evolution. So it's happening in such an accelerated pace at the moment anyway for people that it's good to make that point. I think that what we're all experiencing individually and collectively is that all the darkness is coming and being exposed, and that we need to not just ignore it and pretend it's not there. We need to face it and we need to transmute it. So yeah, it's happening really at a planetary level so much as well as an individual level now.
Yes. I just love our conversation because like you'll bring up things that I wasn't really thinking on that track, and it's like, oh, that was so important to bring up. Also, just to add to that, the fact that working with your internal shadow is just as important as learning about the external shadow. And what I mean by that is like internal shadow, your unhealed wounds, unhealed traumas, unhealed triggers, all those things that you would like to run away from and avoid. And then the external shadow, today we're talking about the aspect of some negative or darker aspects of the spiritual realm, but there are all sorts of things on the planet that we could consider the shadow aspects. So it's equally important to work on the internal as well as the external. And just on a side note, when I am helping people with their psychic protection issues, one of the things that we work on is root causes. And so root causes of what could be drawing those dark spiritual situations to them, because usually it's a pattern that's happening over and over again. It's been happening since they were a child, or it's been happening through their ancestral line. And one of the things that makes them more vulnerable to it continuing to happen is that they have these internal triggers, their unresolved traumas, their unresolved emotional wounds that they haven't yet healed. And when they have all of this emotional material that's just that hasn't been resolved yet, it tends to make them even more a target for what I call secondary psychic attack, is where, let's say someone's having trouble with negative energies being sent their way, because that's just something that's been showing up in their life a lot. That doesn't happen to everybody, but some of your viewers will relate to what I'm talking about. And so if the person has a lot of unresolved emotional stuff, then the negative forces will have an easy time sending people into that person's life who will activate the triggers.
And that can be
so I call that secondary psychic attack.
Sure. So that can be people that, they attract drama, and they've always got stuff going on around. And the dark love that, because what they're doing is they're feeding off that energy, that loosh. That's what they love to. That's like their food. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the second misconception or false belief is that if you are high vibe nothing dark can touch you. Only people who dabble with the dark have problems with this stuff. And that's actually not true. It's not true. Now, people who dabble with the negative stuff, they oftentimes will end up having, let's just call it cooties or whatever funny word that we want to use.
Can I give you an example of that? Can I give you an example?
Great.
Because
yes, please.
My partner, when he was living in a house in England when he was young, he was really young, and next door they were playing with a Ouija board, and he was lying in bed, and this spirit came in over the top of him and went in front of his face and put its arms out and things, and it was, you know, obviously really dark, but it had come directly from this Ouija board next door that they were playing a game with right at that moment. Stay away from Ouija boards, everyone.
Yeah.
They're not good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I completely agree. Yeah. So there's this belief that if you're not dabbling with dark stuff and you focus on being high vibe and meditating and then nothing dark can never touch you. But here's the hard truth, and I know this is hard for some people, but I've actually had and you may have had the same experience. I've had a lot of people come to me over the years who are feeling really confused because they say, I thought that if I focused on good, I thought that if I was high vibe, nothing dark could touch me. And so I don't understand why this negative thing happened to me, why this negative spiritual thing happened, that it should be impossible. I don't understand. And so they're having this existential crisis, this cognitive dissonance, because the popular belief doesn't match with the reality that they experienced.
So what you're saying, Maya, is that they have a feeling that because magnetically they're at this rate, that the dark can't touch them because magnetically they're at this higher rate, and the dark's at this lower rate, and so the two won't connect, because that is a popular belief system.
Yes. And what people forget is that, yes, even though like energies attract like, so somebody dabbling down here is going to attract this level, but also opposites attract. So like energies attract like in our reality, but also opposites attract. And so one of the common things that I see is that people who are light bearers, who are truth bringers in this lifetime, that they often are targeted because of that, because they're seen as a threat to the dark forces. Now, I want to give a message of hope right here and of empowerment, that even though this is, my experience and my observation has been that this is true, that there are people who are targeted. It's definitely not hopeless, because by simply being aware of that potential and knowing that you shouldn't put your blinders on just because you meditate every day, that having a level of awareness and checking your energy, educating yourself, learning about what kind of energies are out there that you should keep a lookout for, and just being empowered instead of putting, there's a tendency out of fear to put our head in the sand, to say, oh, la, 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 I'm going to pretend that I can't see or hear any of that. Hopefully, actually, I had somebody say, I've had many spiritual seekers say to me, well, I know that you teach about psychic protection, Maya, but I'm just not comfortable with that. And I'm just hoping that if I don't think about it, it like nothing bad will happen. And I just smile and I give them, compassion, because I'm not here to push anybody or to force anybody. But in my mind, I think, well, good luck with that. Because like putting your fingers in your ears, la, 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 I can't hear you, I can't see you. That's not really going to work. To keep our eyes open. It's like if you try to drive. So back to the driving course thing. If you are afraid of car accidents, and so you decide to drive with your eyes closed, how far is that going to get you? Right.
Right.
It's like,
well, I guess too, it's like, you can make the metaphor with what's happening in the world at the moment. And there's a lot of traffic lights. I can't say the full word, with kids, with ing, traffic lights. I can't say the word on YouTube. Yeah. But, all that sort of stuff coming up for people to see. So you can pretend it's not there. And that's easier. But the truth of the matter is it's been very prevalent on the planet. And so when we see it, we can actually do something about it and transmute it. And it's not about pretending it hasn't happened or pretending it's not happening. It's about acknowledging it, recognizing it, and then getting rid of it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you brought up that example. I think one of the powerful aspects of that example is switching the perspective, because I don't think anyone watching this wants for any of those horrific things to be happening. Right? And so we wouldn't put our own fear of the T word ahead of the safety. Oftentimes we put our own fear first with our own safety. And we say, oh, I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to believe that that's possible. I'm not going to believe that that's happening, as far as like any dark forces interference toward ourselves or our family or our loved ones. Like, we don't want to look at that because it's uncomfortable. But we need to be brave enough to recognize fear. Like, this is fear. This is not empowerment. We need to take that fear and move it over here, get ourselves grounded, and, like you said earlier, neutral, so that we can have clear vision of what's going on and what to do about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's really impossible to make smart choices when we are in a state of fear. If we're running from something, if we're running away from learning about something, or if we are just if we're avoidant, or if we're in overwhelm, any of those levels of fear, we're not going to make good choices. So how about we get into some tips?
Fantastic.
For how to be empowered. Okay.
Please.
So I wrote down some notes here, and feel free to add anything to this.
Sure.
My first tip for your audience is in regard to learning about, because the first step, if you're not informed about psychic protection, just like learning about it. So the first tip of learning about psychic protection, applying it, and living from a place of empowerment, the first tip is be compassionate with yourself. So for some of you, that self-compassion might mean going slow, because if this is a little bit out of your comfort zone, go slow. The reason why I say that is because if you jump in, like if you have had a fear of this kind of stuff, and then you jump in and you listen to like 20 hours of YouTube videos on like all this dark stuff, it could overwhelm your system. It could activate fear, and fear is not the place where we want to go. So we want to acknowledge what level that you're at with self-compassion, what you're ready for. Maybe you're ready to read like the first 5 pages of my book and just take a week to digest that and let that sink in. So be compassionate, go slow, do some grounding, and as you are moving into self-awareness, notice any thought loops that come up, any like fear emotions, fear thoughts, those like OCD, obsessive thought loops that come up. That's actually a lot of times that's actually encouraged by dark forces. You mentioned how they like to feed off of loosh, they like to feed off of the fear. So through your own self-compassion and self-awareness, notice if you start to get into those thought loops, that rumination, whether it's about negative spiritual activity or the like traffic light situation that you were referring to, or all of the other very difficult things happening on the planet. I mean, we can get sucked into that, but that's, of course, that's another trick of the dark. We don't want to get sucked into that.
No.
We want to stay neutral, stay empowered, stay grounded. So that's the first tip, is like, that's square one, is maintaining your sense of calm and self and inner guidance. And then the second tip is a reminder of how powerful you are. Now, this might sound trite, but I want to just explain a little bit more that we have been taught, as I mentioned earlier, we've been taught since we were young that those who we perceive as in authority are more powerful than us, whether it's our boss at work, whether it's our parents when we were younger, or maybe as adults, our parents are still the authority, the government, whoever, fill in the blank, whoever we perceive as authorities. There's also this perception, whether we realize it or not, it's a very common perception that people have, is that that entities, so they believe, whether they're aware of it or not, that entities are more powerful than they are. And that is simply not true. You actually are extremely powerful. And in one of the chapters of my book, I talk about the tactics of the dark forces, and also some of the mental and emotional manipulation that takes place. And one of the most common tactics, whether it's one ghost that you're living in a house that's got a ghost problem, or you're dealing with like serious, like major dark forces stuff in your life because you're a whistleblower, you could be anywhere on that spectrum, that entity or force would like for you to think that you are powerless and that it has way more power, that it has way more power than you do. And 9 times out of 10, so most of the time, that's completely false. And it's like a game that a psychopathic person would play with an individual. So these human behavior disorders that we talk about, like narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy, like where the person has these particular behaviors, that those behaviors are very common in the world of entities and dark forces. So think of like this manipulator who's actually not very powerful at all. And they're playing a game, a very masterful game, to try to get you to think that they're powerful. And the only reason why they're doing that is because they have like pretty much no power at all. Yes, please add.
I just want to add that. Thanks. I just want to add in that I did a show yesterday on the Soul Tribe on the Rumble channel, and I did talk about the importance of us understanding that we are God co-creator beings. So we have divinity within us, and that it is not external to us. It's not in a church, it's not in a religion, but it's within us. So if we see ourselves as co-creator, godlike beings, not in a sense of ego, but in the fact that we are completely empowered on every level, and the whole problems that we have in the world of being controlled by the dark and the deep state, the cabal, whatever you want to call it, is based on the perception that we don't have that power within us. Once we transcend, and transcending is transcending means trance, TRANCE, ending. So once we arise above that trance, that we are powerless, everything stops. All this manipulation and control and the lockdown pandemic stuff and all that sort of stuff, they can't do that if we know that within ourselves we are our own sovereign being that can choose the reality that we think is appropriate. So it's very tied into everything that's happening planetarily at the minute as well.
Yeah. I love that you said transcending, because it is like, it's a trance, it's a brainwashing to make us believe, to make us forget our power. And so it's one thing to hear the words, you are powerful, but I invite everybody to like really work on taking that in every day, making that more and more an embodied truth.
Absolutely.
Not just
Feeling
yes.
how that feels,
Feeling it.
be powerful. Yes, which is, your power center is your solar plexus, centering your energy there and emanating from there rather than from anything sort of external. Yeah, perfect.
So I'll go over one more tip, and this is awareness. Awareness is key. So what that means is to learn how to check your energy field. Don't be afraid to look at and feel into your energy field. And this goes for checking for anything from like empath sensitivity stuff. Like you just went to the grocery store and somebody's energy glommed onto your energy field. So that's not necessarily an entity. It's just something that doesn't belong in your field. So don't be afraid to notice that and have the power to move that out, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where there are people who might have a presence in their energy field that doesn't belong there. This could be something that that came into their field recently or when they were younger, or it could be something ancestral. Be in your power enough to have an awareness. That's part of being a sovereign being. It's like if you are the protector of your home, you're going to walk around your home and you're going to notice if there's like somebody standing in your house that doesn't belong, you're going to take care of that. So part of being a sovereign and empowered being is noticing, paying attention to what doesn't belong and moving it out. And I have something really exciting to share so that we don't feel like there's always these big, huge, scary things that need to be removed. The fact is that once you get a handle on this, that you'll get to the point where you can check your energy field every day or a few times a day very quickly. And you'll notice if there is something small trying to happen, trying to come in, and you can address it immediately. And what I found from experience myself and with my clients is that most major psychic attack issues don't start off as a major issue. They start off small and they build because they weren't cleared in the beginning, because they weren't noticed. So if you can be empowered, aware, taking care of things on a daily basis, checking your energy, clearing your energy, then the likelihood of anything having the chance to even build into a major problem is going to be so small.
Can I say, I think there's a metaphor for that, which is physical illness. It doesn't just, you don't just go, boom, I've got this big tumor or something. It is incremental. It starts in the etheric layers, the layers around you in your aura and the etheric layers, and it works its way into the physical. And then from that physical point, it accumulates if you don't address it or work with it, if that's something that's happening to you. So it doesn't just go, boom, it's there all of a sudden and it's this big thing. It comes in on the different levels, on the different layers, and in the same way that you're talking about. That's how it works, doesn't it, the universe?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So do you have any questions or anything else, or anything that you'd like to share? Anything else?
Well, I'm going to be sharing all your wonderful details below. If anyone would like to purchase Maya's books or work with Maya, all her details will be below. I'd also love to share, if I could as well, that I have myself a protection workshop. I have a section of video workshops called the Higher School of Learning workshops on my website, and one of them is a psychic protection workshop as well. So if that resonates with you, that's also available. So these are resources that you can access if you feel that you'd like to learn more about this, or if you're having challenges in this way. And the other thing that I do also with clients as well is I work with energy attachments. So if they're getting spirits attaching to them, sometimes what happens is they try to find a source of light and they don't know how to go to the God source, so that light, and they'll attach to your energy when they're transitioning. So, I work with clearing energy attachments with people as well, if anyone's interested and would like that work. But Maya, what are the ways that you work with people? You've got your books available, which is in the link below, but what other ways are you working with people at the moment? Are you doing one-on-one sessions?
Great question. So the main way that I'm helping people right now is through my Spiritual Empowerment Academy. That is a group online program, and one-on-one sessions are available for members of that program. I used to have one-on-one sessions available for the public, and what I noticed is that with people who were having major ongoing, like lifetime issues with psychic protection, that they would get better results with their one-on-one sessions when they were also learning all of the steps of how to empower, like all of the daily protocol for how to empower themselves, how to check their own energy field. So now the one-on-one sessions are available for members in the Academy. So that's an ongoing program. And then I also have a free group, and that is a group that I started when I made that vow, that story that I shared earlier, when I was awake in the middle of the night and I said, I'm going to help people who are going through this. The first thing that I did when I got through that situation in 2016 was that I started a free Facebook group, and that group is still going. And the group is called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And we have a free class, a free Zoom class in there every month. And we have daily discussions, and it's just a really wonderful, nurturing environment. And then I also have a YouTube channel called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And what else? And I also have my website, which is also called psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And if you are interested in working with me, there's a link on there on psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. There's a link in the menu that says work with Maya, and there's a whole list of all sorts of other options that I didn't get into today.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to say wonderful work that you're doing, Maya, on the planet. This is really important at the moment, and wonderful that you're doing that humanitarian service for free as well. And, I think it's so important when people find the area that is their divine mission, and then they are able to give it to the world in lots of different ways. And you're doing that, and it's a wonderful example for others as well. So thank you, Maya. It's been wonderful to chat with you. And, I hope that we can stay in touch and, support one another with what we're doing. And it's been just lovely to connect with you too. I felt like a wonderful symbiosis.
Definitely the synergy was there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was great.
Yeah, lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And all your details are below for everyone. And feel free to leave some comments below as well if you're experiencing any of these things and how you're dealing with it too. So, I love to encourage the interaction as well in the comments. So thank you, Maya. Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Hope to chat again soon.